Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. This is a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casazza, joined today by Chris Anderson to dip into the mailbag, Chris. Not quite yet a week into practice for football at West Virginia. 4 practices, a day off, 2 in spider pads, 2 in shoulder pads, a couple of news conferences with the head coach, coordinators, and players. As part of that, a lot of questions and a lot of answers, but it seems that, man, there's just so much interest now, Chris, because the optimism is up that it didn't take very long for people to fill up the mailbag and the VIP side. So, what better time than right now to take some questions, provide some answers, and remind you, if you want to get in on this or anything else that we do over on the VIP side, last day to sign up, Chris, 60% off for the annual membership price. One of the perks, I guess, is you have access to the Q&A. You can ask questions, things that are on your mind, itches that you want us to scratch. Hey, small price to pay for a big return like that. 60% off, Chris. It makes me mad every time. It's like pennies for everything that we write, but hey, good for you. Um,
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know which way to look at this, but I think I did the math on it, and it's the equivalent of the entire year of this coverage and access and everything for the cost of like a family of 4 to go to McDonald's. And I don't know if that says more about what the price of McDonald's is doing right now or how good of a deal we got going. So either way, money better spent at earsports.com.
yeah, McDonald's in moderation. Get the app. Ear Sports, no moderation. When do we get the app, Chris?
That's right. Yeah. Oh God, please don't start that.
Well,
Please don't.
let's start then. The reason that we're here, Chris. What do you say we pull out a question and get to the answer?
Let's do it. I'm just gonna roll right down the old message board as they came in, skipping a couple because we're gonna save those for the 3-minute videos later in the week. By the way, Mike, did you see my post on the message board asking people, do you like the 3-minute videos? Should we do more of them? Um, a exactly even split at the moment between yes, I watch them. Please do more than twice a week. And no, I can't even stand to see your and Mike's face on the pod as it is. So
Surprised.
hitting 50%, that's good somewhere in something, right? Oh
Yeah.
well. Whatever. Anyways, moving on. V Kitco asks, with the early buzz of Nico's improvement, is there a better starting QB and backup QB combo in the conference than Gigi and Nico?
I'm struggling to think of one, and the only two that come to mind would be Sanders and Staub at Colorado. I think people kind of forget that the backup has played and played well there at times in the past. I think he had over 300 yards in his one start last year, but because Sanders is so good, it's a bit of a drop off there. You figure just, and that's really not the backup's fault, but that's one where the guys played and they really like him. And then this one is maybe a little bit different, but Robertson and Finn at Baylor is pretty interesting too, but those are two very different quarterbacks, and they're going to go in an offense that I don't think is a perfect fit for Finn, maybe more for Robertson. That's Jake Spavital's air raid, but it does sound like that Finn's going to be the starter there. But again, one really good player from the MAC and Finn, and a guy who kind of intrigued with Robertson at Baylor. And that might be it, Chris. Like, and I would probably in this situation, given I think how close the two are, but also it doesn't seem like the offense is going to really change at all when Markio comes in. Boy, it's hard to have a backup quarterback these days, so it'd be hard to think there's a better arrangement right now in the Big 12 than what they have here. A lot of continuity for those two, and again, not apart from the left-handed, right-handed thing, and the fact that one's faster than the other. I'm not sure there's a great difference between the two as far as what they want to call. How the plays look, yeah, sure, a little bit different. Well, one's a starter, but I think they would probably roll out much of the same offense. Couldn't say that last year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think when Nico had to start last season, what was it? Or play mostly, it was 20 points and 17 points. And like, woof, that offense really slowed down. Oh, the offense was a little slow to start the year as it was, even with Green at quarterback. And two, to your point, how many other teams have quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks that actually have experience, that actually have starts? So credit to Nico here. Again, he does more things with his feet as well. That Texas Tech game, not pretty passing the ball, 78 yards on 21 attempts, but 72 rushing yards. He kept the offense moving enough to get that win. So I'm with you. It's not pretty, or it wasn't pretty. Maybe it will be prettier if he has made the improvements that the coaching staff alluded to. And I'm with you. I think just kind of I don't want to say by default they have the best 1-2 punch, but it's pretty up there.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What if Nico doesn't roll his ankle on Wednesday before that TCU game last year, and he goes out and he plays better, essentially his third start, let's say, but second start, third really prolonged a period of playing time in a row, and they go out and they win that game. They still win the game with Garrett Green, but if remember, Greenwood not supposed to play. Markio gets hurt. They have to see if Green can play, and they get him ready, and he can go. And really, they don't even start opening up the playbook until halftime because they're like, okay, Green's actually good. What if Markio doesn't get hurt, Green doesn't play, they go to TCU, they win? Like Green comes back like, hey, I'm healthy. What if?
It's still Green. I
Okay.
know, and some of that might be influenced by hindsight here. Now that we're a full year removed from that, and you saw what Green did for the rest of the year, but think the coaching staff felt pretty comfortable with, or felt that Green had a pretty comfortable lead in that race between the two quarterback. And I'm not sure that game's going to change anything, even if it would be impressive to go on the road and beat TCU. So
I think what's most interesting about that is that the TCU game is then followed by the open week.
yeah.
So yeah, Green has more time to get healthy, but you have a period of time to really look at your cards with Markio and say, boy, we really liked this guy before, and he's starting to come along. Green was not yet Green. He just wasn't. He became Green, and it really did in that TCU game too. But sometimes I think about that too. They had, idle time on their hands. Sometimes things are a little bit crazy in open weeks, and who knows? Maybe they double down and they go Nico all the way. And again, who knows where things are right now?
Luke Zoolander 01 asks, how likely is it that DeVries and WVU will add a center via the portal before the season starts?
Oh, I think it's highly likely they're going to have a big guy on the roster before the season starts. I don't know if it'd be like a 4 or a 5, and then who knows? But like, there's writing on the wall here. This is going to happen sometime soon. There's been different identities and that I've heard about, but like, I would be very surprised they don't have one person.
A lot of talk about a foreign big man. Those the foreign players are the types of players that get added last minute. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. GD Full says, who are we not talking about now? Back to football here. Who are we not talking about now that we will be talking about after fall camp or the Penn State game?
It's a great question because so many players on this team are known or have been talked about because they have been needed to fill one of the few spots where there isn't a known. I think it's a really good thing for the program. So you're kind of reaching there and you're thinking like, man, people really haven't seen Josiah Trotter, but boy, people have talked about Josiah Trotter. I think that's an interesting one. Probably too easy of a pick. So like, all right, well, what about someone else? Maybe that spot. Reed Carrico's gotten early compliments from different coaches too. That's an interesting one because we haven't seen or heard about him too. But go to the offensive side, Kristen. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the appeal and it's the shiny new toy. But when you watch Craig Generos play the same drills at receiver, it's not the same as obviously Traylon Davis and Will Dixon. It's not even the same as like Cole Taylor. Taylor's a little taller, but Generos looks like he is just a really smooth receiver. And they were doing stuff, and I don't want to freak people out, but it was a drill, and it was essentially throwing screens to tight ends where like one other guy goes out and blocks, another guy comes in and blocks from the edge. So it was more of a blocking drill for tight ends and receivers, and it was just fun to watch Generos catch the ball and scoot around like on a screen and get like through the tunnel and out the field. They don't have that swiftness and that acceleration and that fluidity at that position. They have a good blocker in Davis. They have a good all around tight end in Taylor, but like a receiving weapon, a guy who can run up the seam. I have a hunch he's going to be involved in the pass game somehow. And you've seen different things where it's him and Taylor, but it's also him and Davis early on in formations. That's 12 personnel. That's a way to make sure there's a good blocker on the field, even if it's not Generos. Maybe it's my infatuation with tight ends. Maybe it's like, again, recency bias, but there's just something there with him. And one of those things you go back to, Chris, and I was looking at the reporting on him, was like, why the heck would you add a tight end when they were in the roster straits they were in and when they were recruiting and developing tight ends like they were? Well, why not if he can do certain things that maybe he's on track to do?
Well, I like that pick, by the way. I do. I really do like that pick. I'm going to go to the other side of the ball, and I'm going to say TJ Jackson. Because I'm with you. I was thinking Carrico, because yeah, in the spring they never mentioned him, but all of a sudden, a couple of these press conferences with the assistant coaches lately, Jordan Leslie talked about him some, so I think maybe he's disqualified from this conversation since he's now being talked about. But Jackson is a guy who was an all conference type defensive lineman. And West Virginia lost a lot of their depth from last year. Still have some starters returning, still got some good players, still got some high potential guys. But maybe I'm looking too much into this. But I believe it was Leslie the other day who was talking about Ed Visterinen and said, called him a nose tackle, a nose guard instead of a defensive tackle. You know, he's typically listed as a defensive tackle, one of the guys on the outside. Is there a world where, and this is not to take anything away from Fator Momoba, who has been playing well in the brief stints that he's played, but is there a world where maybe he keeps the same role of 20 to 25 snaps? Vistaranen plays a little more inside because even Neil Brown was like, hey, we got some versatility. Vistaranen can play inside or the boundary or fields boundary side. Yeah, excuse me. And then Jackson gets some of that time over at defensive tackle, or Martin gets some of that time. Feel like Jackson's going to be, if not at least the fourth defensive lineman, maybe even the third defensive lineman in this group and in that room. In it, maybe not week one, maybe week two, week three. He's the guy that we start talking about as pushed his way into more of a role with this team.
Yeah, I think early on, especially, maybe not against Albany, but Penn State and Pitt, you're probably not going to see a lot of Nate Gabriel and Elijah Kinsler and Makai Byerson. Maybe later in the season, fine. But like if they're getting into a spot where they need to move somebody around and stay strong, yeah, you could put Vestarin in the middle, give Moba and maybe even Hammond Russell a break. Perhaps Vestarin is better in the situation at nose. Um, and then you could put Jackson and Martin on the edges and keep a pretty good line out there.
Tomcat F14 asks, is WVU able to / willing to pay the full amount of the cap for the house settlement?
So with the revenue sharing cap,
I take it that's what it means. Yeah.
I'm they better be or better be on track to and find ways because that's going to be a competitive disadvantage. It's going to be used against you. Like, and you know these tales from recruiting, Chris. I mean, what one coach will tell a player about the school that the other coach at the school recruiting him won't tell him, whether it's true or not. That gets in that player's head, and like it's going to be a leverage piece now, and it's going to divide. And again, you're not going to have a division between the haves and have-nots. That already exists. You're going to have a division between the haves and a division between the have-nots. And how do you create that separation and exploit it? It's going to be with situations like this in the cap. And how much revenue do you have to share, or are you willing to share? If it's going to be hard for a lot of schools to do it right away, and West Virginia might be one of them, and that's not West Virginia's fault or those schools' fault. This is really thrust upon mistakes years and years of planning to divert 20-some million dollars to expense it, but also account for it in other ways. If they don't do it right away, then remember when they came in the Big 12 and it was like 50% and 66% and 85%. Maybe there's something like that. It's like, you know what, we're not going to be there right now. We will be there before long. But that is a great question to ask and answer. And that haven't seen or heard a whole lot of that yet when it comes to West Virginia or even specific schools because this is still so new.
Making Bacon says, I understand that the basketball team is overseas, but am I insane for thinking they should have some sort of medium to watch the team?
I don't
Building
want to
excitement, Michael.
I
Building
don't want to.
excitement.
I don't want to complain about this because I think they're pretty good when it comes to. I think they're very good when it comes to memorializing things with social media and graphics and all that stuff. And if there was a way to do it, you'd like to think that they could. I don't believe that you're going to find their non-conference team pouring over footage of a July game or an August game against a Lithuanian club team or two youth academies in Italy and be like, oh boy, we have an unfair edge. How silly of West Virginia to share that video online from their 3-game tour of Italy. I don't think that is real. That's just me. So why wouldn't they do it? There might be a reason. It may be a manpower thing, but they've got someone over there doing photos and videos. It's weird, and I don't know why. So not to be critical, I didn't ask beforehand. I kind of figured there would be some availability that you could watch a stream. Like you could have like Flow Map, maybe something like that. You could find access to it. But then I was thinking, who's doing that over there in Florence or in these cities that they're in? So maybe that's not possible, but there's probably a reason why, and I just don't know it. But my whole thing is, I'm sure they got a video coordinator over there. Actually, they just hired their video coordinator, so maybe he's not over there. They probably have somebody over there who is recording the game for practice purposes and like the team sits down and watch film. Here's how we looked. Hey, we need to do this better. That's extremely natural. Couldn't they just upload that to YouTube?
We'll see why not.
Truncate it. I mean, yeah, cut out parts maybe you don't want. Like if you don't like if they zoom in on the huddle and it gets really tight and they're okay, that's stuff that we don't have to see, but if people want to see the game, do that. I think I like those NFL replays where you can watch a whole game in like 30 minutes. Just cut out everything between the snap. Could you do something like that? Maybe, but again, like why aren't there? There might be a reason.
I I wish there was. I'm sure there's a reason. I don't think it's like you said. I don't think it's gamesmanship to make sure that some you know team with an RPI in the 300s is watching West Virginia play, like you said, like a second-rate Lithuanian club team in like a dimly lit YMCA of Italy.
Yeah.
Like it's nah. But I thought their follow-ups, putting in the pictures, putting up the stats, sharing some of those stats, sending out a press release with some comments from Coach DeVries, that kind of stuff is helpful. And again, there's part of me that's like, oh, you don't really like that because they're controlling their own message, so they're getting, just as a independent thinker and I guess a media person, don't like entities putting out their own spin of how things go. But of course, it's just a fun exhibition. So who cares on that part? And that goes to your point about the video. You can release your own video. You can make it look however you want to look. You can release a 30-minute video of that game, and 20 of it is the bench guys getting in at the end to blow the game out. So I wish there was something else. I thought they did a nice job doing what they did if they were limited to that. But it is what it is at this point. I think there's more pressing concerns than being able to watch that for this team.
Yep.
WVU Germ says, what preseason grade would you give Ren Baker for his work on the football program for 2024? Is there a link between his efforts and the preseason excitement among fans?
I thought about this and like I know he's like Geppetto and pulls the strings and all this stuff, but I just don't know how much you can credit him for the stuff that really matters. I think that there's a good amount of goodwill, and we've been over this, that comes from the contract extension. And that's by and large him. I get that, but that's also Neil and his people too. So it's not like one got an A and one got an F there, but it's also better than a C for both of them. So it's difficult for me to give him a ton of credit for that, but he did get what had to be done, I think, at least to satiate people because had a good season, addressed the extension while doing that, go to work in the buyout a little bit. I just think like holistically though, everything that Brown wanted to do, short term to long term, that you like that you've seen so far this offseason, so those are things that he maybe implemented at the end of the season or years ago, but you like it right now because it's in place and it seems like it's working. Again, off the field stuff, I understand that, but it still has to be in place to jump off. That's by and large Brown, and you can credit Baker for diverting some of the salary that Brown forfeited to the assistant coaches to making sure that they have a better staff or like a staff that's not going to wander perhaps as eagerly because they're making good money now. But again, that was Brown kind of forfeiting that money too. So I get the point, and I kind of even think Baker would say thanks, but the other guy had a lot to do with that. How about this though? The conditions to be hospitable. It's kind of Baker's house, so you kind of give him credit for making sure that the roof doesn't leak and that they can do these things. But can't give him a ton of credit for it. But does it happen without him? Does it happen if it's a hostile environment? Probably not. So credit to him for that.
The group effort. He helped set things up. He laid out the groundwork. He helped with, you know, furthering the NIL push within the program and moving everything together. But none of that matters if the team, if the coaching staff, if everybody else around the athletic department doesn't buy in and do their part as well. None of it matters if the team doesn't win football games. So I think, going 9-4 and coming back with a potential top 25 team this year also helps a great deal there. And if that wasn't the case, it doesn't matter what Ren Baker did. It wouldn't have made a difference. So,
And you could also say, hey, he didn't fire him
yeah,
in November of 22. So, I mean, good for you. I guess you got an A for foresight there.
yeah. So A's for lots of people around there. All right, I'm going to give you four players. Give me one sentence each because I think you've seen it in person at fall camp. Two fall camp practices in person so far. Slofty03 is asking about new QBs and new running backs. So quarterbacks, Ryder Burton, one sentence, go.
Competitive, gonna make a difference in that room.
Khalil Wilkins.
A year away from a year away.
Okay. Dior Hubbard, running back.
Kind of hidden right now because I like the other guy more.
Trayvon Dunbar, the other guy.
Uh, he's big and has good balance. I think you're going to hear the word like run balance with him. He's low to the ground and he does not get knocked off his line very much. Impressive.
He McFeely says a lot of the offensive success is based on projecting steps forward with the receiver group. In your all's opinion, what wide receiver has the best chance of taking those steps forward?
Whew. The talent with Rodney Gallagher is hard to overlook. And then I know people are maybe down on his season last year, but don't forget, like it was so new to him that going through things a second time will probably help him a lot. And then I know this is a lightning rod, but it's kind of hard to look at some of Hudson Clement's, I don't know, sabermetrics, whatever you want to call it, and think that there isn't something there. Like the guy makes contested catches, he gets open, does have good run after the catch. And again, for a guy who was kind of confined to a couple of healthy games last year and the statistics came from one, I understand that. There's something there though that you can work with. And then again, just keep that on track because also it was new to him too. Great high school career, same as Gallagher, different backgrounds, obviously, but there's potential there that is kind of in different stages of development. And I think it could go somewhere with both of them.
All right. I'm going to come back to D Sprad's one because that one's going to be a little longer. I'm trying to get through some rapid fire ones here. Salty Dog 8159. Just how serious was the talk of Rodney Gallagher playing defense, snaps on defense? Has he gotten any so far in fall camp?
I haven't seen any, and I've asked about it, and people just kind of went, "Come on, that." So I don't know. And I even asked Jordan Leslie about it in the news conference on Saturday, I guess, and just said, "No, it's one of those things we did in the spring in case we needed him, but things look better now." So no idea why. Sometimes spring can be pretty mundane, and a guy like him, you can only do so much receiver. Like you're not gonna solve the problem and make all the advances at once. So how do you keep a guy happy and make it fun for everybody? Yeah, let him spin around and learn a little bit about the other way to play, which isn't a bad thing for a guy who's trying to cover people in the slot. That maybe helps you get open in the slot a little bit too. But I would be very surprised, and I would be probably concerned if you saw number 24 playing the slot and covering people in week 3.
RBC WVU says various outlets had WVU both in and out of the preseason top 25. Best guess. Will the Penn State game feature two ranked opponents?
You see, our 24/7 came out and doesn't have West Virginia, even though West Virginia was in the post spring top 25.
Yeah, something happened over the summer that knocked West Virginia out of the top 25 over 24/7 Sports.
We've
So
been running these stories about the strength, the weakness of the top 25 teams, and West Virginia has been involved in every one of the ones so far. The top 25 comes out, and I was like, oh, let's see where they have them again. Nope. Got the RB
I
though.
blame your take on linebackers, or was that my take?
I take. I think you'll see. I I think so. I just think their offseason has been strong enough and people know enough about their offense and just having voted in this once before and not wanting to do it again. Um, People look at the prior polls like, okay, who was ranked last season? And you're going to knock out some people and you're going to move some people in who've had good off seasons. But if you see, and again, West Virginia was not in the media poll last year. That was the coaches poll. But you're going to see teams like here's a team that was like 27. I don't like this team so much. Knock them out. Oh, they lost all these people. Knock them out. There's a way for them to pull themselves up into that top 25. So here, let me be bold, Chris. Yes, 2 ranked teams.
Agreed. That's all I got. Agreed. Salty Dog 8159 asks if GG were to get hurt and Nico has to play slash start, what would be your confidence level drop off in a game's outcome? Let's say your confidence in the offense with Garrett Green is a 9. Where are you with Nico on a scale of 1 to 10?
It's depending when in the season, where, and things like that. Because I wouldn't feel great about him going in against Penn State, but I also saw him come in and kind of rescue him on the road against Oklahoma State. So some of that's dependent, but let's just say like if everything's equal here and it's a neutral site and it's, you know, not crazy conditions or whatever, weather otherwise, or like they're down by 30 points. So you're probably at like a 6.5, 7. I just don't think the running threat is the same. And that's why you revere and maybe even fear Green so much is that if part A of the plan doesn't work, he's got a part B, and then part B can also trigger part C. So I don't know about Nico with that. I've seen him live within the structure of plays, and that was because they really didn't want him running a whole lot. But maybe with Burton, you can afford to have him be a little bit more devil may care at the ball, not with the ball, but with his legs. So maybe that's not fair, but I wouldn't go 9, but I wouldn't go in the middle either. So probably not far from the middle, but probably like that 6.5, 7.
Forrest Poston says, how will the roster limit be implemented? Will walk-ons be grandfathered in, or will everyone over the 105 limit be forced to leave the team as soon as the limit takes effect?
I mean,
Um,
you've had more talks about this than I have,
I was
Chris.
gonna say I can hop in here because this was actually one of the things that I talked to someone about, and they said, one, a lot of the intricacies, the little details, which aren't that little, still need to be figured out with this 105 man limit. Again, I mentioned on the board, or in one of my stories, split scholarships. It's not out of the question. Giving again, I gave the example of you have 85 guys on full scholarship like always, and then the last 20 spots take up 10 scholarships, 20 guys getting a half a scholarship, and then you're spending 95, but 105 guys get money. Um, the getting it down to 105 right away. I mean, you're being given some notice here, and the belief slash slight concern is that the expectation is you start 2025 with 105, period. End of story. That is going to make things tough. And that's part of the reason why I said I'm not expecting WVU to all of a sudden start recruiting 8 more high school kids and start adding to this class. There is a very much a wait and see kind of thing going on in Morgantown, everywhere, really, to see what these final details are going to be like and how they should fill out the rest of their roster. Because if it's 105 hard cap starting next summer, they may already be done. Like they're gonna have to push more guys out if they want to add anybody else. So it's kind of a wait and see thing right now.
Here's an exercise for you too. Go to the West Virginia roster, and it's not impossible to get from 120 to 105. I'm not gonna do names here, but like you can kind of go and tick some people off, cross some people off, which might tick some people off. But when you go from 105 to 85, like there's some people there. Like there are some players that'll be factors on special teams or one day could have a scholarship. And it's not going to be like that, but like you got to keep those 20 people somehow or another if you're going to go that way. So there's reverberations for sure. And again, I don't think people really realize that partial scholarship. Um, that's new. That's different.
NC Wayward Ear, after 1 week of fall camp practice, I assume, whose performance is sustainable and whose is fool's gold?
Man, I just haven't seen a whole lot of stuff that makes me go, oh, they're on to something there. So like when I'm projecting about Jen Ross, like I saw them do a tunnel screen drill at tight ends, right? And that was more for blocking for other people. I'm not sure that that's a sustainable thing, right? I like what they've had with Jaheim White as running back one both times I'm out there. So could he sustainably be the number one running back, or like 1A and Donaldson's 1B, and they're just a complement to each other? Possibly. Nico's had a good start so far. The offensive line has been solid. That's interesting to me, but sustainable. How about Aiken Garnes and Garnett Hollis as starting cornerbacks? I've seen that every day. I have not seen a rush from people behind them. I know Jacoby Spells has been fun to talk about, but he's still me playing catch up a little bit. And they love Garnes as his versatility and the way he can run, and that's a compliment to Hollis being a tough physical player on the other side too. I think it's sustainable. Those two can be your starters on week 1.
All right, you mentioned spells, and that was the next question. SG Taylor 24, fall camp hype or finally gonna show out?
I don't know, man. Like I watched the guy in green stick his nose in to the fan, so to speak, and play in drills on a Thursday on the first week of practice and do the same thing on Saturday. And I'm thinking, here's a guy who could be doing like sprints on the sideline or riding a bike, and he's not. And he's out there and he's working. I was impressed by that. And so I asked about it, and Jordan Leslie gave a really good answer about it. But it's not the first time that we've heard people say good things about Spells and his recovery. They were not sure he was going to be available for a couple of games. Now he may start the season like on the field, not start, but like he may be there the first game of the year. And when the media's out there, which again is 2.5 hours out of a couple of 3-hour practice days, so not even one practice, right? But we've seen him do stuff. I don't know what he's been like behind closed doors. The rest of it, I would imagine pretty similar. Now, the thing is, when they go full contact, they're going to have to cool him off a little bit because he's not cleared. So he may lag a little bit there. Will he be the third corner? I don't know. But I think that if he has put himself in this position, he's got a chance. And that's the most you could ask for right now. And he's doing more than you can ask for by being out there and being so involved in drills where he's in limited participation with the green jersey. So signs are pointing to a better outcome for him.
Chestnut says, who is this year's Nick Malone on the offensive line? Can play almost any position along the line and tight end.
I don't know there's another Nick Malone out there. Once you add
Yeah.
the and tight end, I don't know about that.
All right. So who can play all five spots on the offensive line?
Yates.
All right. That's not projected to start. I'm going to keep limiting you.
No, you're pretty much limited to guards. Now it's like, can you play guard or can you play tackle? I don't. The center thing would maybe give Livingston a chance to be versatile because he's done it a little bit. I was trying to think like who's their veteran that was also taking snaps. Would it be Hubbard?
No, I guess so.
I know Milam has snapped before. I'm sure Milam's good enough where he could play guard or center, but like if something happened, would it be so there's Malone's serviceable in a number of capacities, and I think that was a luxury they don't have right now, but also and not against Nick Malone here, they don't have to have that luxury anymore. They've got a good second guard, a good second tackle. They don't have to be as um, creative with how they built a depth chart that way.
Yeah. And this is part of the reason why in the preseason or even back in the summer, excuse me, I discussed, hey, what about this right tackle spot? Do you almost not give it to Xavier Bosley, but if it's close, like really close, do you let Bosley start? And that way you have Malone capable of sliding all around. Although I guess it doesn't matter. You just start Malone, and if something happens elsewhere, Malone slides over there and Bosley slides in at right tackle. So, yeah, he's a versatile lineman that this team needs, and I think every team needs. So, key that he's there. Um, Coal City here says the last 10 national champions returned three of the four following: head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and quarterback who started at least 4 games. Among the Big 12, I'm assuming contenders, WVU and Oklahoma State return all four. Why are the Mountaineers and Oklahoma State, let's focus on Mountaineers, not expected to finish higher than seventh, right? Wasn't it seventh?
Yeah, just haven't done it. Mike Gundy's done it. He's won the Big 12. He's had double-digit win seasons in a string. Just haven't done it before here. And again, that doesn't mean it can't happen or won't happen. But if you're asking why they're not being considered, there's a passes prologue kind of a thing. And if you've seen the team do it before, you're much more likely to believe or endorse that they can do it again. And Oklahoma State has that in its favor.
And this brings me back to a question that was earlier from D. Sprad says, do you think this year's football team has the pieces in place to win the Big 12? For me, that answers the question right there. They got the four keys here. I do think there's a couple things that would concern me. The one, just what you mentioned there, haven't done it before. It's hard to do it for the first time. It's hard to have a team full of guys who haven't had a lot of success go in and win those tight games. Believe it, God, was that Bill Connolly on ESPN posted the stats, and it was the Big 12, basically half of the games are within a field goal or less, or one score or less. And so that's a lot of tight games you got to win. And that usually takes experience. That usually takes guys who've done it before. So I think that might be my biggest concern about this year's team. That and, no, I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say linebacker. I'm not gonna say it.
I think though what's interesting is West Virginia went through that last year and won a lot of their close games.
Yeah.
And that's beneficial. Houston shouldn't have happened, did happen. We also saw them learn from that and defend a Hail Mary much differently and much better at the end of the season. So my point being that they were going through those rough stretches last year, but they were winning, and that's how they ended up with 9 wins, 8 in the regular season. The bowl game wasn't really close, but they got through some of those tricky finishes and close games that are kind of custom to the Big 12. And that's promising this year because they've been through that. That experience has already happened with the team that's coming back and knows how to handle that. Can they be on the right side of all those again? with the schedule, we'll see. That's another thing too. I think people look at the schedule and go, "This is pretty difficult." Um, but why not? I think they do have the pieces to answer the question, but pieces had to perform. The performance part, don't know yet, but I think they've answered a lot of the questions as to how it had to look when they got to spring football, when they got to preseason camp, when they get to August 31 is the next phase now, which again, early development working toward that. That's what they want to do.
Yeah, I've muted myself again. How much of a step back, this is from Croton here, does the offense take due to the offensive line replacing Nestor and Frazier?
I don't think much. Um, I try to break this down. Like the thing about Frazier, I think Nestor's a good player, but I think he's more replaceable than Frazier. They got tackles. We like Malone. Bosley's good too. They can do that there. The tackle would be okay. Um, Frazier was just unique in that he could go do things that two offensive linemen had to do. He can go out and handle two defensive linemen on his own. They didn't have to give him help. If you just go back to what centers normally do, if West Virginia's big weakness is that they're just going to be like a lot of other teams with a center, that's not bad. They just don't have an extraordinary center who does unusual things that make life easier for the offensive line. If they have a center who does ordinary things that makes life ordinary for the offensive line, that's fine. That's not a drop off. And if he can't go on and take two defenders by himself, Brandon Yates, if he doesn't demand double teams up front, still 5-on-3, 5-on-4, the offensive line should be okay. You add a tight end in there, you should be okay. I don't think it's devastating. Yeah, big drop off from Frazier to anybody. But again, if your drop off is from extraordinary to ordinary, it's not terrible. You can deal with that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think by year's end, and I should have pulled this up beforehand, but pretty sure Nick Malone was rotating at right tackle with Doug Nestor. That's not to take anything away from Nestor, but again, it goes to show the kind of depth and what West Virginia has coming back. So I don't think it's that big of a drop off, at least at tackle. Um, down to the last 2 minutes, but I still love you, Doug. Says predict the order of finish in rushing yards. Green, White, Donaldson. Give me an order.
White, Donaldson, Green.
Ooh, White, Green, Donaldson.
Okay. White both times, huh?
Yeah, I'm in on it, especially seeing or hearing from you that you're seeing White is, getting the 1A kind of snaps
Yep.
here and tells me that staff believes in that, which is fine. There's nothing against Donaldson on that either. Um, think that covered all the questions that were in the mailbag except for two of them, and those two will be covering on the 3-minute videos on Wednesday and Friday. Mike, anything else?
Congratulations to those two for making up the 3-minute video content there. Reminder again, 60% off the VIP membership there. Pennies a story, Big Mac, medium Coke, fries, sweet and sour sauce. Same price basically there too. One better than the other. We'll leave it up to you. Last day to sign up. Take advantage now, or else we'll do more 3-minute videos. Who knows? Until then, I'm Mike Casazza.
I'm Chris Anderson.
We'll talk to you then.